All right, welcome everybody. We're back for another episode of the podcast slash YouTube series on FTD. Today's episode is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go through the top prospects in the league. The only qualifications I have are I thought it'd be fun to do a prospect list. Tyler's going to join me from San Francisco here. Introduce him in a second. And it's going to be, we're big prospect guys. We love talking about the draft and young prospects and the systems and stuff. So development type things. So it'll be really fun to see different opinion than the OSA. The one quirk I have with the OSA is it always overvalues the super raw guys way too much. In real life, all the $5 million July 2 guys are never in the top 100. They're just too raw and young. You have to prove yourself. So the one, the caveat we made was they have to be 60% developed. So just like on the batting scale and the pitching scale. So that's essentially your currents to potential. So if you look at this guy, he's like fully developed. He's like literally 90% developed. He's just missing a bit in home run power. So if you looked at a guy on the OSA here, that was like 2080, he's not going to be on this list because he's under half and everything. So 4080 would be like 50%. So Serratos is like maybe the highest ceiling, but he's just too raw. And some of these guys are way too raw to be on this list. Like a 2080 from the number 2 prospect, it's just too risky. So I thought it'd be more fun to do realistic rankings, guys that have like proven in an A-ball and stuff. So our list, that's the one cutoff. If you're wondering why a guy's not on the list, like these top 3 guys all aren't on the list, it's because they're not at 50% of 60% of their value yet. So anyways, we'll jump into it here. We'll talk about the top 5 at each position. So Tyler, if you want to kick us off here, we got Jon Klekar at catcher. That's our number 5 catcher. What do you think about his skill set?
Yeah, what's going on, Dan? Yeah, for Klekar, yeah, he's pretty much ready to go. And for an Angels team who got negative WAR production out of their catcher this year, I think he's a good option to be their starter next year. Came over for the Reds, had a really good season between AA and AAA as a 23-year-old. Good ability to get on base with that high eye and hit for some pop with that gap. Like you mentioned, just a little off the home run power, but if that comes along. This is a guy who could be at a very affordable contract. They're starting catcher for the next few years.
Yeah, again, just a lot of eye really stands out to me. Not too many catchers with 60 eye, so a guy that can really get on base at the end of your lineup there. Probably never going to be a 3 or 4 hitter, but guy that can give you a solid at bat. Should be pretty well rounded. Next up, we have Kevin Chambers, one spot above. He's not quite as developed. Chambers just seemed a little bit higher ceiling because he had a little bit more power and catchability, which are 2 of the most important things for a catcher. A little more flaws with Chambers, but still very high ceiling offensively. Just a lot of 50s and 55s, and very developed for a draft guy. We don't have too many guys that were just drafted this year on this list. There's only a handful, maybe 3 or 4, just because they're so developed college guys. But what do you think about Chambers? You like the overall skill set, even with the flaws?
Yeah, it's just the personality and the base running's a little bit of a hit, but you won't find much good base running for catchers for the most part. Yeah, the bat should be good. They pushed him pretty hard right away, playing in A and high A, so aggressive with him out of the gate for the Red Sox. Getting a go in the fall league too, which is nice to see for a guy who is just drafted. But 65 ability or better is always a huge plus, and couple that with 50 potential home run power. Got to like that a lot for a second round pick.
Next up, number 3, we have Seattle catcher. Seattle has 3 really high level prospects at catcher. 2 are on this list. The third is a guy that's too young to be on this list. He's a future guy that might be on the list in a few years, Coelho. But Telacevic is a monster. This guy is a really high draft pick who has some really solid all-around game. A couple weaknesses also with him, like the arm and stuff, but overall skill set, my scout thinks he's a beast at 60 eye, 60 contact, 60 gap. Really good base runner. Pretty much checks all the boxes. I know, Tyler, you mentioned we recorded this video before. We had some audio issues. So this is round 2. Had a little practice run. I know you mentioned before that the improvement he had jumping up this year from last year's minor league stats. So that's always a good sign when a guy trends up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially the gap power's playing, right? 34 doubles in high A this year. So the gap power's playing for sure. That contact and eye, which are going to be kind of the other big calling cards for his bat, need to come along a bit. Those really haven't quite played to 50 plus levels yet. I know they're still under at 40 and 45, but maybe the best well-rounded bat. The 60 ability with the 35 arm for me is mediocre, but with a bat like that, he can certainly get by and be a plus offensively, which most catchers aren't.
Yeah, and it's always a little scary once a guy gets past that age 21, once he's 22, 23, and you still see like a 30 tool, there's odds are it's probably not going to get to its max when it's that far off. You never know, but if he does get to a 45 power, he'll be a very impact bat. I'd imagine he'd probably be more in the 35-40 spectrum, and he'd still get on base a lot with that high eye and singles hitter, but always like that power is something you want to keep an eye on, because that's the thing that's going to take him from like an average top 12 to 14 catcher to being like a legit top 5 guy. You need to get that power to have enough of a bat to make him like a real impact guy. So the 30 tools there's not too many 30 tools in this list. That's why we tried to do the developed guys, but obviously his ceiling's still really high even without that power. Next up, we have a real nice catcher, Mario Molina for Nashville. Nashville's got a few really nice prospects on this list. Molina is one of my favorites. A lot of stuff I like in a catcher. The high intelligence. What can you tell me about Molina?
Yeah, a little disappointed in his year, to be honest. I thought, he after he moved over from Kansas City and dropped down a couple levels, I thought he was going to be a little better in high A, but still just 22. The bat's really good with he can hit for some pop with 60 potential gap and 50 potential home run once that comes along. 65 ability, always a plus for me as a line drive hitter. So lots to like about him. I think next year will be a big building year as he kind of works through the even higher levels of the minors, and to see what Nashville has for the future.
Yeah, him and Boris are pretty close for me. I think Tyler too. It's just a tad different profiles. Like Boris had quite a bit more contact, but they both have pretty good eye and gap, similar power. I think Molina has a little bit more current and potential power, 5 points higher. So just a little bit different. Molina's ceiling just had a little bit more defense, which is I think why we bumped him up a little bit above Boris. The 65 and 50 are a lot higher than the 60 and 35. So just the contact a little riskier though, just because the low contact's always risky. Also an extreme, a pole hitter, so that's not a good sign with the low contact. So I wouldn't expect very high batting averages, but had a lot of the rest of his profile you have to like. So guy that should be pretty nasty, and I thought deserving in the number 2 spot for sure. Number 1, Steve Richardson. What can you tell me about this? Seattle have him and Boris could be pretty impact catcher combination in the future for a nice young rebuilding team. What do you think about Richardson?
Yeah, he ends up making Telacevic, who was crazy enough a top 5 pick, seem a little bit expendable to me. They get him in the second round this year out of Adley Rutschman's alma mater in Oregon State. Really good season right away. Didn't hit it great in rookie ball, then gets up to A ball to end the year and hit the ball really well. Completely, very well rounded offensively, basically 50s across the board, a little higher, a little lower in some places, but that with 65 abilities, a fly ball spray hitter, which you love to see too. And he's getting some work in the fall league as well. So love to see that. Think he's kind of, in terms of the developed catchers, kind of clearly the number 1 for me with that offensive profile and the 65 ability. So like him a lot for the future.
Yeah, I love that power hitting profile with high ability is one of the best combinations you can have a catcher. Reminds me a lot of Joey Bart's profile. Big power, big eye, big ability. Should be, and also big body catcher. Should be a really good prospect for them. Would expect him to develop fully, but we'll see. Number 1 catcher on this list, though, a pretty impact player. Number 5 at first base, we got Jonathan Rodriguez. This guy is a really talented dude. So got some big time bats coming up here in these first base rankings. Jonathan Rodriguez, number 5 here, has awesome defense at first base. When you look at him, you think he should be able to play a couple other spots, but like a little bit flawed at third base and second base with the low range, but also a little bit flawed at pitcher. All pretty close to being a really legitimate pitching prospect. Unfortunately, the stuff's a little low, but it looks like he could be a starter. Pretty talented 2-way dude.
Yeah, guy that the Nats got in the deal for Omar Fernandez at the break this year. So it comes over, playing in high A and double A for the Braves. It comes over and starts to hit in triple A for the Nats. So they're, they have guys pretty high up in their system that are a bit raw, but he did well there. The bat's just a little off for me. He is absolutely torching the fall league to start the year. I think he has some of the best batting numbers in the league, 200 OPS plus through his first 10 games there. So really like to see that, especially for these guys kind of right on the cusp. And like you mentioned, he probably does fit in best as a first baseman, a really good defensive first baseman with those abilities, but has the ability, if there's, injuries or, something going wrong, probably ends up sliding better as a third baseman, a little weak armed over there at third, but with the 40 range, second is kind of a liability there. But He could at least back up there, maybe platoon as a right-handed hitter against lefties at one of those spots. But 55 or better across the board. You don't mind having that at first base at all. So, like Rodriguez.
Yeah, really talented dude. I absolutely love that prospect. I remember Kamish when he traded for Milan saying almost everyone was asking about him in trades when he always came up, and he just had to pull the trigger on a big did get a big arm there at the deadline, which helped him quite a bit there. Pretty impact arm and Omar Fernandez, so worth giving up. But yeah, wouldn't be surprised if Rodriguez turns into a stud. Next up, we have Jose Gomez. Jose Gomez is on Arizona. Arizona also has some multiple guys on this list that are looking real nice. Gomez has a monster bat led by some elite gap power. You like that profile?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much what you look at for a first baseman. Big time gap power, the home runs still coming along a touch, along with the contact. But like we'll see with all these Arizona guys, they really just murder it in the minors, and he was no different. 30 doubles, 20 homers, drove in a ton of runs between A, Double A, got a little taste of A, high A, and got a taste of Double A at the end of the year. Good enough to play solid first base defense. So the guy's going to be a big bat. Needs just a touch more seasoning, so probably another full year in the minors. But this could be a real impact bat as a big left-handed first baseman soon.
Yeah, I've really developed for a 21-year-old. This guy would be in the draft if he was a college age guy this coming season. And he's just, if you compare his currents to the guys in the draft, it's just not even close. This guy's fully major league ready with 50, 75, 50, and 45 in the approach. It's just unbelievable, unbelievable gap power. This guy could hit 50 doubles at the major league level. So see how he does in Arizona. Next up, we have another guy that's very developed, maybe top three most developed guy in the entire list of all positions combined. This guy is a monster. Came back in the Caleb Tuzio trade at the deadline from Atlanta. I know his eye has gotten even better. He had a 55 eye and then jumped to 60, and then just in his last report for me, it jumped to a 65 in August. Pretty monster profile. Not a great base runner and some bad mentals, but the pure offense, which is pretty much the most important thing, is hitting the ball in baseball, scoring runs. Garces can do that. What do you think about that eye and gap power combination with the big home run power?
Yeah, it's really nice and probably a worthwhile return for giving up a guy like Tizio. Yeah, the contact and avoid. He's probably going to swing and miss a good bit, but that offense needs some impact bats, and with that power and even with the eye and the ability to get on base at a very good rate, which he did well, was really good actually in AAA for the Padres in El Paso once he came across 413 on base percentage there. So guy who I have to think gets a look for them as he's going to be 25 here soon, pretty quickly right away in 2033.
Yeah, I also love the big power lefty first base bats, the David Ortiz kind of mold, Ryan Howard type things. When they're not a ground ball hitter, if you look, this guy's a spray ground ball guy and a fly ball hitter. So pretty nice combination too. It can make a big difference. He's a guy with the 55 contact, could legitimately hit like 260, 270. So if at his peak, so it could turn into a real impact bat, maybe like a Josh Bell type, kind of reminds me of a little bit.
Hmm.
Pretty decent against a little better against righties, but pretty decent against lefties too. Not a monster split, so should be pretty solid all around. Next up, we have Amari Chambers. Amari is a guy that was one of the most developed guys in this draft. He is a guy we list at first base. He can probably play a few different spots. But I think he's best at first base. I think he'd be a plus plus first baseman where he'd be a little bit weaker at second or left field. I think left field he'd be really solid too, but most likely, like the Twins, they have a pretty good team. I think he'll probably slot best, but it doesn't really matter where he plays, first base, DH, left field. This guy's a baller.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, he was one of my favorite guys to see where he'd fall coming out of this most recent draft. The only, and had that weird where he started college baseball and was just basically terrible, and then got so good and progressed so much over his career. The home run power is really all that needs to come along. I mean, that is what makes you a legit first base left field option if you have that kind of pop. But the rest of the tools are so good. It's actually incredible to have such a good base runner as at that position as well. Hit the ball pretty well in high A to start his career, so got him started quickly. It's his birthday tomorrow, so just about to turn 21. So that'll be a big season for him next year as he works his way probably through Double A and Triple A. And if that home run power starts to come along, this is a big impact bat for the Twins coming up.
Yeah, Yeah, real absolutely destroys against righties there too. Quite a bit more developed than he is. 15 higher gap power against righties and lefties. Also should be able to hold his own though against both. Big time impact bat. Next up at number 1 for the first baseman. This guy is a monster. One of the most impressive first base prospects that we've seen in a couple years here. Miami had a couple beasts there a few years ago. Figueroa and Capelli made some big trades at the deadline last year to get rid of those guys as they were getting pretty expensive, and got some real good prospects in return. One of them for Capelli going over to Cleveland, along with a couple real nice looking pitchers, was this Ben Crocker guy who's come a long way since that trade. Really developed his currents a lot, and now looks just about almost as good as Capelli. Not quite the same athlete and defender, but bat wise, pretty special.
Yeah, it looks a lot like we touched on Jose Gomez a few spots lower. It's basically a close to potential and a little better Jose Gomez. Just absolutely murdered the ball this year in the minors. Killed Double A, killed Triple A in just 27 games, and then Marlins get him up for a quick show at the end of the year and hit the ball great there. So basically, a great profile, especially with the gap in that park, the ability to drive for doubles, along with the home run power and 60 plus contact and eye. So he's going to get on base at an insane rate as well. He's a little DHy as a 6'1" guy who's not a great defender, but you don't mind that at all with this type of bat. I think he's pretty much, despite he might not generate too high of a WAR with that kind of level of defense, I think he's kind of an immediate Rookie of the Year candidate.
Yeah, that's a real nice pick there. Wouldn't be surprised if he hit like 300 as a rookie with like 25, 30 bombs. And like you said, the doubles are going to be real interesting with that huge gap power line drive hitter. Awesome profile. Really good fit for that ballpark, too. Next up at number 5 at second base, we have Josh Mules. Mules is a guy that is in your system. I really like his profile. I didn't really keep up on him during the season. He 360 on base percentage. Just love this guy as a real nice utility type guy. More like, I guess he's kind of like a full time second base. I know you're pretty loaded there, so we'll see how that shakes out. You have a lot of prospects for that position, but this is a guy I just love. Those like spark plug guys, high work ethic. They're kind of good at everything. Elite base runner. Has a lot of tools. Gives you a real good at bat. If at the bottom of that lineup, almost the ideal number 9 hitter. Probably good enough to be a leadoff hitter on some less talented teams. Your lineup's pretty loaded, so I don't know if he'll get that spot early in his career, but gives you a real nice at bat with a lot of base running skills. You like that prospect of yours there? Got some big plans for him?
Yeah, well, it's crazy to say the Giants are loaded anywhere, but yeah, I mean, it's like a perfect glue guy, right? The spark plug personality, the good athlete, good enough defender at second base. He's not going to be winning any Gold Gloves, but he's not going to be a bad negative zone rating guy. Yeah, like him a lot, especially against lefties. I think he has some capability to be a leadoff guy. The power isn't non-existent too. He did hit 10 home runs in AAA, 4 in AA this year. So especially against lefties, that gets up to a 50, and that's pretty legitimate power. But a guy who puts the ball in play, can run really well. Really good glue guy for a team looking for just a stopgap second baseman.
Yeah, just love that profile. One of my favorites. This next guy is really interesting. Listed as a center fielder with 55 range, more of a corner guy most likely, but definitely really good second baseman. Has 60 range for me. I think years ago has him at 55. Put up some monster stats in Double A this season as a 23-year-old. Hit 22 bombs. The improvement's just been awesome. Last year he had 5 home runs. And then this year he cut the strikeout rate by 6% from 26 to 19 at a higher level, and went from 5 home runs to 22 bombs in only about 100 more plate appearances. So unbelievable season. Almost a 2020 man. Just came up one short. 19 stolen bases. Really good base runner. 75 base running, 75 stealing. High intelligence. A lot of stuff to like about this profile. And he's a righty bat. Anything you want to add on Jordan Ramirez here?
Yeah, tough not to like that kind of pop from a good defender. Would like to see him get some time at left field and right field just to be kind of a pure utility guy. The Outlaws have Underwood there at second. He's been their guy at second base for a long time, so he might be a little blocked there. But with that power and kind of the ability to shift all over, be a good athlete, he's a great utility piece for a lineup. And that power is looking pretty legit with 22 home runs this year. So 5.2 WAR in Double A, despite being looking pretty ready to go in the majors is still something you can't overlook. So like him a lot.
Another guy, pretty similar profile across the offensive board here. This guy is a little less defense at second base than the last guy we just talked about, Ramirez there. But Flores' bat is tremendous, and he's a line drive hitter with some big gap power. I think the high ceiling of the bat and a ability to give you a pretty decent second base. Probably a negative zone range guy. It's only 50 range, but the high air, the solid arm and turn double play should get you a pretty usable second baseman with a real plus bat at that position. Do you like the Oscar Flores' overall profile?
Yeah, little bit of a second base, third base tweener. You know, you'd like if he had five more range or five more arm, and he could play either one pretty well. If that home run power turns into 55, you know, not I don't think there's anything wrong with him being a Gold Glove first baseman if this guy can hit, and he kind of showed it this year. Now the power hasn't come along yet. Home run power, I should say, with only 7 this year in the minors, but 37 doubles between high A and double A as a 21-year-old is pretty impressive. So pretty well far along for a guy who's just 21. Not sure if he's going to be able to be good to go next year quite yet, but a lot to like about a big potential bat here.
Yeah, I noticed the really high bat pip stand out to me on his page here. Every single level. Vancouver, a 430 bat pip. I know the bat pips are a little higher in the minors because bad defenders, but you can just tell he hits the snot out of the ball. Going to be a huge doubles threat. 60 current gap power, and you see 430 bat pip. You see a 400, 330s. Real nice numbers across the board there. Number 2 here. This is where these top 2 guys are real close. Both really nice prospects. It was tough to decide which guy to put 1 and 2. We went. We'll explain that in a bit. But number 2, Gastone Re as Atlanta's top prospect. This dude is a beast.
Yeah, just some big gaps still, and granted, he's only 20, but he's, you know, for me, 25 off his contact and 20 off his eye. So just need to see that a little more, despite the fact that he got all the way up to AAA this year and hit the ball well. The gap power is legit. You know, hit 30 plus doubles this year in the minors. Solid enough defender at second base, but if he gets to 60 home run power, you take that and you run with it. So still a little bit of development to go, and granted, just 20, so no quick rush for him in Atlanta. But no, they love him, and he's going to be a big time middle of the field bat option here soon.
Yeah, a little bit more raw than almost everybody else in this list. This guy just hits the threshold of just being enough developed to be on this list. If he was just a little bit less in his currents, he probably would have missed it. But he's just over half in most of the stuff there, and his gap power is so developed. So just checks off the bar. Really high ceiling guy, but yeah, a little more raw than some guys in this list. But he had to be here because the sky high potential. And the one guy above him kind of made the tiebreaker for me because of just the currents were so developed. This guy essentially is pretty much the most talented dude on the Mets 26 as soon as he touches the field next year, in my opinion. A guy that I think would be their team MVP, probably like a 3 WAR guy. 60 range, has a little bit of error, lack of errors, probably get you like 20 errors playing second base, but the range is so high and the bat's so good. I think that makes up for maybe a guy that probably won't be great at turning double plays and having a few more errors than normal, but 60 range is pretty impressive there. When you have 60 range, 60 contact, 60 avoid K, big plus home run power, that's a lot of things to like about that profile.
Yeah, no, I think he turns into a middle of the order guy, which is just crazy as a second baseman right away. Especially the splits, right? If you look at him, he just murders righties, which he's going to get, you know, 75-80% of his at bats against. So love him a lot. Not a great athlete in the middle of the field, but this bat is fully legit. Didn't have the best year in AAA this year, but I think at 21 he's ready to go and take over that job next year.
Yeah, exciting to see. That's kind of the first big time player to come up for the Mets system, and a system that's absolutely beyond loaded. Not a lot of guys on this list for the Mets because most of their star prospects are crazy young, but they have an incredible core of talent from the age of 17 to 21. So he's kind of a guy that might be able to come up a little bit earlier in those guys and be kind of like the leader of that group. Maybe like the star player at 26, 27 when those guys are starting to jump in the league there at 22, 23 years old. So guy to keep an eye on is the big time core piece for the Mets. Next up at third base, we have number 5, Danny Diaz. Danny Diaz is another Padre on this list. A lot to like about this profile. Has a few. He's a little bit raw, kind of like Ray. He's only 20 years old, one of the rawer guys on this list, also, but a lot to like with this profile.
Yeah, he's kind of one of those not great defensive util guys where he can get away at Third base probably ends up being his best spot, but can play some corner outfield too. Even second in a pinch if you needed him. But do like seeing, repeats low A as a 20-year-old after doing it as a 19-year-old last year, and basically improves everywhere by 50 points. Batting average goes up 50, on base up 50, slugging up 50. So like to see that development for a young guy. The power, especially at a corner spot, needs to come along. But at just 20, I think it can at 50. This is a real time, big time bat for them.
Yeah, I love that gap power there for San Diego Stadium. That'll be fun to watch.
Hmm.
Next up, one of my favorite players on this list. I was really excited. I didn't know about this guy till recently. This guy's some monster trend up. If you look at his career profile, he was a 19th round pick. This is the best part about the park, in my opinion. These guys that were late round picks, seeing their development packs just go from a complete non prospect and 25 contact, 25, 35 power, just a guy that's like barely draftable, to turning into a couple years later. And all of a sudden, this guy has 65 power at third base. A great athlete, 60 across the board in the running stuff. Fly ball hitter with 70 arm. This guy, that's crazy. That's like almost a Chris Bryant type profile with monster home run power. This is a guy that could be a really impact third baseman. Absolute amazing development for a 19th round pick. Absolutely love this guy. What do you think about Colvin?
Yeah, a guy that you got to try to find a way to get on the rock just for good things to happen, right? Energizer Bunny, love seeing that in the personality. Switch hitter with 60 potential or home run power. You like that a lot. And you really saw it for the first year. He's kind of like a halftime, started half the games in 2030 and 2031 and really got his first full shot to be a full-time starter in the minors just this year. But 21 home runs between high A and double A. And like you said, with that 70 arm, will play good defense over there at third. Has the ability to play some other places as well. Would actually be an elite first baseman and can play some corner outfield too. So a guy you got to find a way sooner rather than later to get up on your team, help morale and help the other guys.
Another third baseman on this list that is really impressive. Another guy that was just drafted this year, pretty young and a little bit raw, but this guy is just so developed for his draft class. I think he deserves to be on here. A guy that probably um, underperformed his talent level a little bit this year in low A. But again, I don't really like to judge guys on their draft year stats too much. Like in real life, sometimes guys barely play their year they were drafted. It's really about that first full season after that. So when this guy jumps into full season next year, probably high A or maybe even A ball, I'd expect a lot bigger production. The guy has a few flaws. He's not a great athlete, and he's an extreme pull guy, which you don't really like to see, the ground ball guy. But as a lefty bat with that kind of gap power and home run power, that's some really high ceilings for a third baseman. Should be a real nice fit in Toronto with that kind of bat.
Yeah, the gap power is absurd, right? 80-80 already. He's gonna start, especially next year, I think, just hitting doubles. Like it's its job. Pretty much a perfect defender over there. Could be better, but 50 range with 65 arm is a good, solid third base defender. Just the contact and the actual home run power need to come along a little bit, but especially as a lefty, this is a guy who's a potential middle of the order guy against righties for sure. So Toronto will be keeping close tabs on him next year.
These top two are really, really talented dudes. Not that the last few guys weren't, but you really get a tier jump here. Jerry Alvarado at number two at third base here. This is a guy that could be a really good at a ton of different spots. Could play right field, left field, first base, third base, all at a very high level. Probably even survive at second base if you wanted, if you had some holes there. I like the
Yeah,
comparison to Nolan Gorman here. What do you think about Alvarado? Big time bat.
yeah, yeah, really like him a lot. One of those guys, exactly like you said, can play all those corner spots and it can play them actually really well too. They pushed him really hard in the minors this year. He got all the way up to AAA, and he wasn't quite ready for the level yet. At 23, he's a little bit older, but he's only drafted in 2031, so this was really his first full season of the minors this year. But getting to play in the fall league for the second straight year, which you love to see. Was really good in it last year, off to a little bit of a slower start this year. But with that potential bat profile, the contact, and the power, middle of the order threat for the Nats here right away. So like him and Rodriguez coming up here pretty closely together.
Ton of Nats on this list. Pretty nice looking system for them. Next up, we have Sean Verdin, another Miami guy, along with Crocker, the first baseman. These guys both got a cup of coffee there at the pro level in September. Both guys kept their rookie eligibility. Both guys going to be very high on my rookie of the year rankings. I think everybody's rookie of the year list next year for the NL. Vernon is just a beast. We actually put him above Alvarado, even though it was very close. We talked about it, and I think just the overall profile, Vernon was just a little bit more developed, a little safer, and a little better defender. I think the ceiling with Alvaro's bat was a tad higher, but Vernon is just unbelievable all-around player.
Yeah, basically the same exact reasoning. We have Quintana over Ray there at second. You know, he's fully ready to go. Another guy, 4.5 WAR in AAA this year, plays a great third base with that 80 arm. He's got a rocket over there at third base, which you always love to see. Comes up with Crocker at the end of the year and is really solid right away too. So love Joe getting them up together. There's another guy who's going to generate high WARs, a good defender over there. Pretty good athlete as well. Just a little home run pop to come along, but hit the ball well, 18 home runs across AAA and the majors this year, and with 42 doubles, the guy is going to be ready to rock. So perfect fit for that park, and that's going to be a sick duo in the middle of that lineup.
Yeah, I just love that. I think Crocker's a lefty hitter and Vernon's a righty, so it should be really nice. Protect each other, get the opposite side bats there. Maybe do like 2-3 hitters or 3-4 hitters. We'll see a really impressive couple guys there. 80 arm, I love that at third base. I've actually read recently arms. I know is really important at third base, but even more important than I think I thought. I've read some stuff on Reddit that just says that arm defense at third base is monumentally important. So really talented skill set when you combine that 60 contact, 60 gap, and the 80 arm. Really impressive player, fully developed defensively too. Just love it. So that's it for this episode. We're going to break it into 2 parts. We'll do the rest of the positions on a future episode here. I'll record it after. So hope you enjoyed and hope to see you back. Cheers.